There is growing pressure on UK care services for older people, and new reports have predicted millions of older people will be left without a family member nearby to care for them. Care UK conducted a study to look at whether Brits are willing to look after their ageing parents. The key issue that was highlighted is the number of people who are looking for further support from outside the family, with over a third not willing to look after their parents should the need arise. It also found that 2/3 of adults worry about what will happen to their parents as they get older.
I think our response to the research would generally be that, well, first of all, we were surprised that that many people would actually, when it came down to crunch time, actually say we would look after our parents full time. It's one thing to say when someone asks you in the street, oh yes, of course I'd look after my parents when they need care. It's quite another when they're lying on the floor and they've been lying there all night and they've soiled themselves and they're crying, to try and lift them up and clean them up and say, yes, I'm okay.
It's all right, yes.
This is all all right. Well, there were a couple of main reasons, I think, that we chose it. First of all, we're not medically trained to assist her in daily life. I mean, if she fell over, we wouldn't necessarily be able to pick her up.
I was very concerned about
the loo constantly.
Yes, yeah.
I suppose, secondly, the stress was a massive issue. I mean, you were so stressed all the time.
I became very stressed and absolutely neurotic about being by the phone,
and
available.
And you were anemic, you were quite stressed and ill all the time.
And also not being able to go out for the day. You couldn't even go out, socially for the day, not knowing if you were going to get called or not.
She hated talking about it and she got very upset when you talked about it. And even once we'd actually moved her in and she'd agreed to stay, she would get quite emotional about it.
I put her in for 2 weeks respite here because I said she wasn't ready to go home, and luckily she wasn't physically ready to go home. Then we extended it to a month. And then after the month, it was becoming quite clear to her that she couldn't cope at home. She wouldn't be able to manage anything.
I think that people struggle to look after their ageing parents because of their they don't have the necessary skills. Sometimes they're just unable to cope. They have small children that are still at home. That, on top of looking after elderly parents, can be extremely stressful. It causes arguments within the family. Sometimes siblings, one wants the parents to go into a home, and the other doesn't and would prefer to look after them in their own home.
I used to visit every day, sometimes 4 times a day, didn't I?
Just to see that she
carer.
was safe, that she hadn't fallen over.
Yeah, take meals round,
wash her clothes
and make sure that the dogs were all right. And I was just becoming more of a carer than a daughter, so we weren't actually, I'd go in, I'd just do the chores and I'd leave. Staff are lovely, they cuddle her, kiss her, and if you come in and they're having a meal, you go and sit with them, or you go into the kitchen, you make tea and coffee and join them for breakfast.
And now she calls it
home, yes.
And I think now we really realise we made the right decision.